Very good morning to you guys. Welcome to Asake Online. This is the Breakfast Club. My name is Brighton Ncube. Today, we want to look at the different issues that are affecting our politics, our current affairs in Zimbabwe. On the 21st of February, there was the youth rally that was held in Masvingo, where different statements were uttered there by young people and also by the Vice President of Zimbabwe, that's Kembo Mohati, on the issue of the third term of the President Emmerson Mnangagwa. I want to talk about that today and get to unpack what the Constitution of Zimbabwe says about that. And my guest for this morning is Matshobana Ncube, who is a lawyer and a legal expert, joining me to unpack that. Good morning to you, sir. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Brighton, and good morning to your viewers.
First, let's talk about the issue of the legality of the two-thirds majority in Parliament. Can there be an amendment of the Constitution without two-thirds of majority in Parliament?
It's not possible. For any amendment to be effective, there has to be a two-thirds majority. So any amendment must be supported by a two-thirds majority of those that are in Parliament, in both houses.
Right, there's been a talk about the two-thirds in Parliament right now. It's in the upper house, right, the National Assembly, and there's no two-thirds majority in the Senate. Speak to us about that then. Should there be equal, maybe two-thirds majority in the Senate as well, and also National Assembly? How do they go about now in terms of amending the Constitution of Zimbabwe?
Certainly it means, look, Brighton, it depends because the membership of Parliament in both houses is there. When you have these votes, I suppose you are referring to ZANU-PF actually having two-thirds membership in both the lower and upper houses of Parliament. But it doesn't work like that. There may be some people in the opposition who may in fact support ZANU-PF in that. So what the Constitution requires is that for any amendment to be done, the Speaker of Parliament should send to the President a communication to the effect that in the lower house there was a two-thirds membership that voted in support of the membership. The same goes for the Senate. The President of the Senate has to do the same thing in respect of the Senate. So it does not necessarily follow that ZANU-PF has to have two-thirds, because there may be some people we do not know, you say, who will vote along with ZANU-PF for whatever reasons, you say.
VP Mohati spoke about the third term, and the chanting slogans to say third term, negative cheaper, and so on. What does the Constitution of Zimbabwe say in terms of the terms? I know this is last term for President Mnangagwa. Talk to us about the terms now, in particular in the context of the Constitution of Zimbabwe.
In terms of Section 95 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, the presidential term is limited to 2 terms. So one should have served as president for a period of 2 terms, whether those were done, consecutively, or someone got in now, they were voted out next, and then they came back again. So those 2 terms are treated as the maximum time or tenure that the person may hold the office of president. So insofar as the Constitution is concerned, at the present moment, there's a 2-term limit for anyone who's serving as president. So they cannot go beyond that period.
Give us a context on if someone wants to go beyond the 2 terms, right? What are the steps that need to be done for someone to go beyond 2 terms as the president of Zimbabwe?
Well, presently, they cannot do anything because the Constitution is clear that they are limited to 2 terms. But then it's not what that person may do, it's what Parliament may do, because ultimately it's a question that has to be decided by Parliament. If Parliament then resolves, with an affirmative vote in the lower house of 2/3 and the same in the upper house, then the Constitution can be followed in that respect. One of those is that the Speaker of Parliament must gazette the amendment for a period of 90 days. And then there has to be public meetings that are held so that the people of Zimbabwe may have an input. But as we have seen before, I'm not sure whether that input is of any value, because people go to these meetings, they do these write-ups to Parliament, they can email or send hard copies, but I'm not sure, whether those have any bearing. At the end of the day, what happens is, or what is important is what then obtains within the parliamentary houses themselves, the voting, two-thirds majority in the lower house and two-thirds in the upper house, then the bill is sent to the president for his assent.
Oh, thanks so much for those contributions this morning. Let's look at now on the issue of the amendment of the constitution, right? Or any section of the constitution looking at the term limits, right? What is the process should be when it comes to amending those sections there, looking for the third term and so on? What is the process when someone wants to amend the constitution of this map? What is the process?
Like I've indicated, the first is the Speaker of Parliament has to gazette the maybe before we get to the Speaker of Parliament, those who are responsible for drafting the amendment documents, they bring it to the Speaker of Parliament. The Speaker of Parliament is supposed to put it in the Government Gazette for 90 days. It has to remain there in the Government Gazette for 90 days. That is to notify the members of the public that this is what is happening, that there is a proposed amendment of the Constitution. And then during that time, there are public consultations that are done. And once that process is over, then the process moves back into the two chambers of Parliament, the lower house and the upper house. Those who are there, they vote. If two-thirds is garnered in the lower house and two-thirds in the upper house, then the bill is sent, because it is done as a bill. The bill is sent to the president for his assent or for his signature. Once the president signs it as a signature, then the constitution is deemed to have been amended.
Right, we have seen Maswingo youth rally on the 21st of February saying, no, we want Mnangagwa to have another term for the third term, right? Suppose other provinces follow suit and say we want to endorse him as well for the third term, but without amending the constitution. And then Parliament obviously debates on that, and then there's a gazette around that, and then there's amendment for the third term. What are the likely implications of this having a third term for President Mnangagwa in terms of issue of democracy as well? We saw him coming for the first term, second term, now a third term. What are the implications of this in terms of democracy as well?
The challenge that we have is that ours is a parliamentary, of course, a constitutional democracy, but at the same time is a parliamentary democracy, because we elect our representatives to go to parliament. So those are the people that we should be talking to so that when they vote in the manner that is reflective of their constituencies, as representing the views and the desires of their constituents. So if then they decide to vote for the amendment, maybe that is what their constituents want. We do not know. But the assumption is that when they do the vote, they are doing so on behalf of their constituents. Insofar as democracy is concerned, well, I don't know, because we are following the constitution. If the constitution is followed to the letter, then that's a democracy. That's the rule of law. Politically, some may not like it, but I, as a lawyer, certainly I wouldn't want to delve into those. That's within the realm of political science and politics. So I want to speak about legal issues. I do not want to express my own personal views, because that would be wrong. I do not want to influence anyone in a certain way.
Thanks so much, Mr. Ncube, for that. Let me just bring on the issue now of the parliamentarians that resigned from Parliament. We have Alan Markham resigning from Parliament, Fatsai as well resigning from Parliament. What's there in terms of next steps? What's going to be done now? Are they going to be gazetted another by-election? Are you going to have 90 days again? Take us through that. What happens there when those MPs resigned?
In terms of the Constitution, Section 129, it sets out the tenure of parliamentary membership by anyone who has been elected into Parliament. Firstly, it's 5 years, then it's termination, then it ends. Secondly, if you are recalled, I mean, as we have seen this happening, notoriously, I suppose, people have been recalled. So that terminates the membership. The other way to go about it is if one resigns their parliamentary seat by writing to the Speaker, then their membership of Parliament terminates. So what's going to happen is, because this is what the Constitution requires, there has to be by-elections to fill in those vacancies. So I think Zach should be working on that process to ensure that those vacancies are filled, because the idea is to ensure that at any given time you do not have a constituency that has got no parliamentary representation. For instance, this issue is coming up. It means these constituencies where these two MPs that you have referred to, if the vote comes up before they are filled, it means there is no voice representing those constituencies, and that is undesirable.
But there's been a talk about the issue of crossing floors. Last time I was speaking to Professor Jordan Moore, spoke about that, the issue of crossing floors, right? Can those MPs, and Alan Makam, be allowed to contest again? Remember, the 2020-2023 elections, can they be allowed to contest again, and the new party or under independent candidates in the coming by-elections? What's the procedure? Are they legally constitutional? What does it say about that?
Yes, they are qualified to contest under whichever name they choose. They can contest as independents, they can contest under any political party of their choice. So yes, they are, in terms of the law, allowed to contest, as long as that political party, indicates to Zach that they are authorized to represent the party. That should suffice. They are not in any way barred from contesting under a different name than the one that they did in the 2023 elections.
Right, maybe to wrap up our conversation for this morning, let's look at the section 129K of the Constitution that speaks about the issue of recalls. What does it say about recalls? It's been used many times. It was used during the era of Douglas Monzora. It's now being used under Chabang as well. Let's talk about section 129K of the Constitution of Zimbabwe. What does it say? Maybe try to break it down in simple terms.
Well, I think maybe Zimbabwe may recall that it was used not by Monzora first. It was used by Tsvangirai in 2014 when he recalled the likes of Bektemba Nyati in Mpopoma, Pelandaba constituency. It was used by ZANU-PF when it recalled Themba Mliswa and Didimas Mtasa. So it has been used so many times by different parties, and of course Monzora, and recently, Chabang, we have seen him recalling, members of parliament in that respect. So in essence, the recall provision is an unfortunate provision because fortunately I was part of the people who were there when the Constitution was being written. There was a serious debate as to how a political party can recall someone who has been voted by the constituents without the constituents having made their say. Maybe what this entails, what we have seen happening, requires that this provision, the debate around this provision may have to be commenced afresh to see whether it is a provision. We're talking about constitutional amendment. Its itself is not per se, out of reach when it comes to amendments. So it's one of the provisions that can be amendment, so that it takes away, so that when people have to be recalled, the people who elected them in office have to have a say. But as it stands now, a political party only has to say that this person has ceased to be a member, and therefore that person falls off. They can no longer be a member of parliament. So it's quite an unfortunate provision, especially when you take into account that the people have taken their time to go and vote for the person, and yet to this recall, they have no say as to whether that person should remain in parliament or not.
But let's also look at on that issue there of democracy now. I have a right to vote as Brighton, right? But however, when it comes to recalls, the power is given to the parliament, to the political parties, right? And taken away from me as the voter. Let's look at democracy per se. Is that clause democratic? As you see that I'm the voter, but however, when it comes to recalls, they're given the power to political parties, not me, the voter. Is my right to vote secure under this clause?
It definitely is an undemocratic provision. because it confers, all rights on a political party. It does not take into account what the constituents themselves say, because when constituents vote for a person, they know that the life of parliament is 5 years, barring any extent, like death and something like that. They want that person to remain in office for 5 years. So then to confer upon a political party the right to then interfere with the decision that has been made by the parliamentarian is quite unfortunate. But this is what we have for now. This is why I'm suggesting that if there is a debate that we also need to be doing, it is whether we need that provision or it is a provision that should be jettisoned from the constitution, because certainly it undermines the right of the people to make a choice of who should represent them in parliament during the 5-year term of parliament.
Maybe as we close up this conversation this morning, Mr. Ncube, let's get that clause again. You say you're part of this writing of this Constitution of Zimbabwe, right? What prompted this clause? What prompted this provision in the first place in terms of writing of the Constitution of Zimbabwe?
Well, it was selfishness on the part of political parties. The two major political parties, liked this provision because they wanted to use it as a whipping system to say they are those of their MPs who they may see as delinquent. So they want to wield this sword so that they can get rid of such persons. But then, in essence, it undermines and it unmasks the pretense that the political parties purport to because they purport to stand for democracy. But obviously, this clause is undemocratic as it comes. So it is quite unfortunate. The political parties were selfish. They thought about themselves. They wanted to control the parliamentarians so that they tore what they term the party line. If they did not, then they had to be gotten rid of, which is quite unfortunate.
Ncube, thanks so much for your time, for joining us on the Breakfast Club this morning.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, there you have it, folks. This has been the Breakfast Club. This is Asake Online. Today on the show, I was joined by the local legal expert and lawyer, Mr. Matshobana Ncube, who was speaking about the third term for Emmerson Mnangagwa, the president of Zimbabwe. Remember, there was a rally in Masingo where the youth from the state wanted third term for President Mnangagwa. So he was unpicking there what the Constitution of Zimbabwe says around that, the issue of the third term, and also touching on the recall clause. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Do follow us right on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. For myself, Brighton Ncube, it's bye for now.